everyone, I'm Paul, and today's video is a follow-up from last week. So if you haven't seen last week's video, I highly recommend that you go and watch it. I'll leave a link at the end of this video, and there's also a link in the description. It'd be much better off to get a full understanding what's going on if you go back to last week's video first and then come back to this one. So anyways, guys, where I left off from last week is that the last thing I said I was going to do was going to call Woodland Mills to get a little bit of help for the problem that I'm having. And I talked to the senior tech there, and he did give me some advice. So I'm going to tell you basically what he told me to try and do. Before I get started here, just to note is that I've loosened everything up so I can take everything apart without using any tools, just to make the video that much shorter. So very first thing he said to do is basically take off the follower wheel, which I'll do here. So just one bolt, and you're going to pull it out. Now you may need a puller on yours, I don't know, but mine comes off quite easily. So the very first thing that he had mentioned to me is that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 Allen bolts that are holding the shaft sleeve here. There's a shaft sleeve that's underneath. This is a shaft sleeve here in the shaft, and it's going through, basically there's 2 mounting plates, and I'll show you that in a couple of minutes. So anyways, he told me to make sure that when it's sliding back and forth is that the bolts here, the Allen key bolts, is that it's not causing any friction or binding when they're, so to make sure that they're torqued in properly. So when this thing is sliding back and forth, so that the bolt head is not catching or the other end is not catching anywhere on the mounting plate or the back plate. So there's 4 of them. So what I ended up doing is I ended up torquing them and making sure that they're all nice and properly seated, and I did not find any issues at all with it. So that brings us to the second thing that he suggested. So the second thing he suggested was to remove the bolts and to take the drive, the follower wheel shaft out. So by removing those 4 Allen key heads or bolt heads, you can pull the drive sleeve shaft out and just put it aside. So the next thing that he mentioned to me, and you can see, I'll just show you here a little bit better, hopefully you can see that well on the camera there, is that this mechanism slides back and forth. Now when it goes between, it's squished in between 2 plates, and just to make sure that these bolts weren't protruding out and it was catching back in the between the plates when it's trying to go in. And as I mentioned, it's nice and clear. I don't have any problem with that. The next thing they do, he said, to remove these 4 bolts. Now these 4 bolts are holding the mounting plate and the back plate that hold the where the tension bar is placed inside the mill here. So I remove these 4 bolts, and then we got to go to the back side, and we have to remove, we'll just go over here to the back side. Let's go swing the door here. And we're going to come over on the back side. Now as we come over on the back side, you can see I already have it all loosened up. Let's get you in a good position here. So the next thing they do is that we need to remove this 1 bolt here on the top. This bolt here is for the spring washer holder. As you can see, all the washers are already starting to pop out. So we'll remove this bolt here. Dropped it on the ground. I dropped my washer, so I better pick that up right away. And then you can just pull this whole mechanism out. And what I'm going to do, actually, just to make things a little easier, a little lighter, I'm going to take off the tension handle, and then I'm going to pull the spring washer holder off, and then I'm going to pull the tension bar. And as you see, as I pull the tension bar, this is the mounting plate, and there's a second one in here, the back plate. So I'm just going to grab that again. So with the mounting plate and the back plate, this mechanism, as you can see, just slides back and forth. I'm going to grab one of the the bolts here that were inserted. And basically you can see once it goes inside, the idea was to make sure that it wasn't catching or binding on this Allen key bolt, and I did check that and that was all fine. So what they told me to check on this here is on the tension bar, there's another Allen key bolt head here, and to make sure that when this is sliding that it's not catching. And you can clearly see here it's not at all, but on the back side, when this was sliding in and out, this was protruding out a little bit, and it was actually catching. You can see basically right in here, you can see right in there, there's not much tolerance, and it was actually protruding and it was catching a little bit. Now, what I ended up doing is I went to the grinder. As you can see here, it's been grinded down. I made it much smoother, and it's moving back and forth nice and freely. There's no catch on it. But I reassembled it all, and if you come back here to the front, when I put it back in, this basically sits in here like that. And when I start tensioning these up, you don't have to put much torque on them. And what happens is that it clamps this tight enough that it seizes this and won't allow it to move. So now I don't know whether it's this piece now, I need to get the proper torque spec for it and then try it. So I have to call Woodland Mills back because I did what they asked me to do here. So what I'm going to do is going to contact them again, find out what the torque spec for this is. I'm going to insert it and see if it's going to slide nicely. And if it's not that, then it has to be those spring washer, those Belleville washers. So anyways, guys, until I get back to Woodland Mills, I won't have an answer for you. So I'm going to go make that phone call right now. Before I call Woodland Mills, what I wanted to do is I want to clean up the washers. So what I've done is I've pulled the spring washer holder off the mill, and I've removed all the washers. They're called Belleville washers. And in addition to that, there are some spacers. You can see the difference here between the two. So the spacers basically go at the end. Now, I just put them in a solution here, a container full of a solution that I have that's going to clean them up a little bit. Once they're all cleaned up, I'm going to repack them into the holder. There is a specific order to put them in. That's noted here in the manual. It shows me exactly how to put them back into the holder. So once I've done that, I'm also going to lubricate the washers and the spacers as well, and also the spring washer holder. I'm going to clean up inside of it, and I'm going to lubricate it as well. You want to make sure that's something that's a lubricant that's going to be keeping moisture out. So the next thing, after I've got that all back together, I'm going to test it. I want to mention as well, there is a thrust bearing that goes at the front. The thrust bearing, I'm just going to clean it up. I can't soak it in the solution because I don't want to lose anything that's inside of it, or any of the lube or the greasing that's inside. So we're going to put it all back together, give it a test. If it works, great. Then I wouldn't have to call Woodland Mills. But if it's still a problem, then I am going to call Woodland Mills. So stay tuned. Well, guys, it's not just always one thing. There's several things that contributed to the problem here. I called Woodland Mills a second time, and I spoke to Derek. I tell you, Woodland Mills tech support is second to none. What a super guy Derek was to speak to. Anyways, guys, I spoke to him a little bit, and one big thing I wanted to know was torque. And the torque was a big thing for me because once I found out from Derek, there is no specific torque that they provide as far as adjusting anything here. And that was a big clue for me to help figure out what was wrong. So based on that, we have torque, we have tolerance, and also we have friction. So those three things I'm working with as far as what the problem was. As I mentioned, there's more than one thing, so let's go through all the different issues, and we're going to start here at the back. So if we come around to the back side here, you can see the tension handle here, and then the tension bars inside, and I had pulled the tension bar out, and when I pulled the tension bar out, I had grinded down the one Allen bolt that was protruding through, and it was catching on the two plates, the mounting and the back plate. It was catching actually on the back plate part where they're squished together. So, and that was causing some friction and a little bit of sticking as it went in there. That's not the only problem. So I just want to show you back here. If we come right around to the back, you can see the shaft sleeve. Now when I start releasing the tension from the handle, you're going to see it moving nice now. Now that the problem is fixed, you can see it moving there. I'm just going to retighten it a little bit here because I'm going to move the blade. So that was the first issue that I had. The second thing was the sleeve here for the spring washers, the spring washer holder and the spring washers themselves. They were pretty, it was pretty dirty in there, a lot of gunk and a lot of rust on the washers and stuff like that. So I ended up cleaning that all up. So that's the second thing that contributed, I think, as far as, you know, a little bit of extra friction in there. The next thing is that I had put new belts. I've got a new belt here on both sides, and I think when I'm pulling the blade, because the thickness of the belts, these are the old belts here that I had replaced. Now the thickness of the belts, you know, the tolerance such basically from the what's going to cause down here on the guide, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is that the belts are a little bit thicker. You can see here there's a bit of a groove, so there's less friction when I'm pulling the blade. Two things. One, I think because it's a wider piece of rubber that's here now, and also that it's also thicker or taller, that on both sides that it made it a little bit harder to pull it off. So there's a little bit added friction there. So what I wanted to talk about was the tolerance a little bit. What I had found is that here on the guide block, on this one in specific, what was happening is that the tolerance between the two little plastic pieces within the block that are adjusted, they're supposed to be at I believe 20 thousandths of an inch. Well, that wasn't the case. I think after I put the new belts on, for whatever reason, or this had moved and vibration or whatever, this had moved and it was binding against the block here a little too tight, and again some more friction, not enough tolerance, or the proper tolerance as far as the clearance goes, to pull the blade off. The next thing to talk about was the bolts here in behind. That's the mounting bolts, and this was the big thing for me, the biggest thing of all. There's the 4 mounting bolts, and those 4 mounting bolts are for the mounting plate and the back plate and the shaft, or not the shaft, but the tension arm in the back. It slides in between and allows you to tension it up. Now, I don't know for 100% sure, but what I think has happened here is that with the vibration again, is that the plates were not evenly squished together, so it was binding on one side over the other. And when I tightened it up a couple times when I first tried it, I didn't know what torque to use. I didn't know whether it was giving enough, too much, or whatever. So I called the Woodland Mills, and basically Derek explained to me is that there is no specific torque specs. So what I ended up doing is I did alternating pattern, and I tightened them all to 15 pounds, where I found that that was at 16 pounds. I started moving the tension bar. It started building up the friction again, and there's not enough tolerance in there for it to move around. So anyways, that's what I can see from there. I don't remember if there was one other thing. I've got the things that I think that contributed. Again, it's not always just one thing that causes the issue. In this case, it was multiple issues, and now my problem's resolved. I can take the blade off quite easily now, and I'm back to milling again. So guys, I really hope that you found this a little bit interesting. Again, it's a matter of just getting in there and trying to figure things out. The more you learn, the more you'll be able to apply to other things. Once again, guys, really enjoy you watching. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time on Gelling Outdoors.